in the US. I brought an engineer that is working for Telegram, and there was an attempt to secretly hire my engineer behind my back by cybersecurity officers or agents, whatever they are called.
The US government should hire your engineer?
That's my understanding. That's what he told me.
That right there is the CEO of Telegram, Pavel Durov, who was just arrested and held in custody in France. Why is he really being held in France? According to CNBC, it's organized crime, drug trafficking, fraud, and much, much worse on his platform. Emmanuel Macron weighed in. America's Alexander Vindman said Elon Musk should be nervous after this. And much of the world thinks that he's being targeted because he has a platform that he hasn't completely handed over to what many would consider globalists or governments around the world. In today's episode, I'm going to look at some recent clips from his Tucker Carlson interview from a few months ago. Should be a great show.
They were curious to learn which open source libraries are integrated to the Telegram's app, on the client side, and they were trying to persuade him to use certain open source tools that he would then integrate into the Telegram's code that, in my understanding, would serve as backdoors.
Would allow the US government to spy on people who use Telegram.
The US government, or maybe any other government, because
What's going on, everybody? So the CEO of Telegram, which is a popular application, was arrested in France. I'm going to go through that story, what the media is saying, and then also I picked out about 8 different clips. I watched the interview with Tucker Carlson. That was 4 months ago. And I picked out the most interesting clips that I think related to this situation today, which is him getting arrested, perhaps why his app is such a threat to certain people, etc. So we're going to look into that. And then after that long episode, which is the main part of the show, I want to talk about 2 things. One of them is Tim Walz. A clip is resurfacing from him a year ago, talking about free speech or the lack thereof and hate speech and misinformation. I have something to say with that out off an Instagram reel and a TikTok I made. And then also RFK has joined forces with Trump. I did a whole video on it, but I want to talk to both sides of the equation because there's some interesting backlash that I've been getting and seeing out there of people that are obviously upset and want people to go harder on this topic. So that's the show. Hope you guys enjoy. Give me a thumbs up in the chat for the algorithm. Dream Rare podcast starts now, and I appreciate you guys being here, joining with me. Yes, sir. It's the Dream Rare podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah. What's going on, Facebook? What's going on, YouTube? What's up, degenerates on Rumble? I'm just kidding. You're not degenerates. I don't know why I said that. Just because you're another platform. I don't know. Anyway, what's up, people? We got Doogie Howser in the house, the real one. Matt, wow, what a great show. Anyway, I'll read some of the comments and perhaps some of the super chats at the very end of the show. I got to do some work, and really, I got a lot of clips to play, so I won't waste your time. We'll get right into it. Let's see, what is the media saying? What are the actual charges? What is Macron saying? What are the threats coming from Alexander Vindman? And then we'll get into the actual, him speaking for himself a couple months ago on Tucker Carlson. So let's get right into it. Okay. Here's what CNBC wrote. It says the Paris Public Prosecutor's Office issued an arrest warrant for Durov in connection to an investigation opening on July 8th into organized crime, drug trafficking, fraud, and the distribution of pornographic images on minors on the platform. The messaging app, which has about 800 million users, is popular in Russia as well as in Ukraine. It's interesting that they said that it was popular in Russia as well as Ukraine. I think it's pretty popular in America, but perhaps it's more popular over there. I'll talk later. Let's just get into what Macron is saying, because Macron is facing a lot of backlash. People are saying this is a political persecution. You're going after him because it's an application that you can't control. Here's the full statement from France's Emmanuel Macron. Macron said, I have seen false information regarding France following the arrest of Pavel Durov. France is deeply committed to freedom of expression and communication, to innovation, and to the spirit of entrepreneurship. It will remain so. In a state governed by the rule of law, freedoms are upheld within a legal framework, both on social media and in real life, to protect citizens and respect their fundamental rights. It is up to the judiciary in full independence to enforce the law. The arrest of the president of Telegram on French soil took place as part of an ongoing judicial investigation. It is in no way a political decision. It is up to the judges to rule on the matter. So That's what Macron is saying. Let's look at Alexander Vindman, who I looked it up because I was like, who is this guy again? Vindman was a United States lieutenant colonel. He was born in Ukraine, and he's come out as really, I would say, a leading figure. He came to national attention in 2019 when he testified before the U.S. Congress regarding the Trump-Ukraine scandal. So before they could really fully launch the Russia-Ukraine war, or rather before Russia invaded, because obviously America was giving weapons to Ukraine, etc. Before that happened, just because Trump wasn't trying to do full-blown war, in my opinion, with Russia, everything to do with Russia, they just made it like a crazy thing. And he came out and, tried to be a part of it and testify, etc. And now he's been a huge voice for, Ukraine being born there. And I think his twin brother won a race in Virginia. You got to look that up. But anyway, Alexander Vindman, he said, while Durov holds French citizenship, is arrested for violating French law, this has broader implications for other social media, including Twitter. There's a growing intolerance for platforming disinfo and malign influence, and a growing appetite for accountability. Musk should be nervous. And he's talking about Pavlov getting arrested, and here's what it means. So what I find interesting about this, or disturbing is probably a better word, is he's not talking about all the things that they talked about, the pornography, the trafficking, the drugs, like all those horrible things that they mentioned. It doesn't seem to be resonating with Alexander Vindman, who's like, yeah, people have a growing appetite for misinformation. Well, that's not what the charge in France is, but it seems like Vindman is making it all about that. Like there were some way, way worse crimes that they are alleging that he did in France. And Vindman doesn't seem to mention them, at least in that tweet, and says, yeah, Elon Musk should be nervous because of disinfo. Wait, is this about disinfo or what they said it was? I obviously have my opinions, but before I fully share them, let's look into a few clips that I clipped up of the CEO of Telegram talking to Tucker Carlson 4 months ago. The first three is him explaining that he believes that the U.S. intelligence communities tried to essentially get his worker to put in a backdoor so the U.S. could spy on Telegram, which is leading a lot of people to ask the question, are global governments like France, America, etc., our allies, are they upset for two things? This is where my mind goes. One, because they can't control it. He's trying to keep privacy private, and he's not trying to give them a full backdoor access, which means pretty much anyone could get in the backdoor. Once you let the U.S. government in the backdoor, pretty much every government can probably get in. But also, the fact that Vindman's mentioning the Ukraine and Russia war, the fact that CNBC mentioned Ukraine and Russia with his arrest, like, is this because Telegram has been a useful app in the Ukraine-Russia war to fight the propaganda from both sides and just get the real message out there, or perhaps a message that they don't want out there? So that's where my mind goes. But let's look at these clips. I picked them for you.
But there's this second part, which was probably more alarming there in the US. We got too much attention from the FBI, the security agencies, wherever we came to the US. So to give you an example, last time
Okay, so I'm just chopping it into 3 different clips because I don't want to get copyright stricken by whoever.
So to give you an example, last time I was in the US, I brought an engineer that is working for Telegram, and there was an attempt to secretly hire my engineer behind my back by cybersecurity officers or agents, whatever they are called.
The U.S. government should hire your engineer?
That's my understanding. That's what he told me.
To write code for them or to break into Telegram?
So he answers that right here.
They were curious to learn which open source libraries are integrated to the Telegram's app, on the client side, and they were trying to persuade him to use certain open source tools that he would then integrate into the Telegram's code that, in my understanding, would serve as backdoors.
Would allow the U.S. government to spy on people who use Telegram.
The U.S. government, or maybe any other government, because a backdoor is a backdoor regardless of who is using it.
That's right.
So I'm going to play more clips because the mainstream media was making it seem like, or at least that's what France was alleging, that he had committed all of these crimes. And one would perhaps say, and once again, I'm not an expert, you could look more into this, although I'm trying to give you the best presentation I can, where one would say you can't have absolute privacy and freedom with an app like this. If there's gangs, cartels, the stuff that you read, all the accusations, like that's going to happen on any messaging platform. And any social media is going to have to cooperate with governments, like whether you want to think they do or not, absolutely they have to. Telegram has to cooperate with governments too. Here's what he said in his words. I don't know if this is true because how would I know? I'm just going off of what both sides are saying. But he's not acting as if he never shared information with the government. He just only shared information with the government that was a crime and a horrific one. And then anytime the government's tried to pry on other topics outside of what they're accusing him of, he would shut them down and say, that's not a crime. You're trying to overuse your power and get me to share all my information, either open up a backdoor so none of it's private or share more than I really need to share with you. So I just want to make that point. According to his words, it's not like he was hiding all the information and just like letting everything run rampant on it. In his words, he was trying to, and he'll explain a few things that he did not allow the government to do. But let's just listen to it in his own words.
Been receiving a lot of requests, demands. Some of them were legitimate. Right? If there was a group of people who was promoting violence, there was some terrorist activity that was, spreading violence in some parts of the world, publicly posting things that any decent human being would disallow or wouldn't want to be posted. We would help them. But in some other cases where we thought it would be crossing the line, it wouldn't be in line with our values of freedom of speech and protecting people's private correspondence, we would ignore.
So he'll mention a few specifically in a second, but he said, like, with violence and terrorism, we absolutely would share with U.S. authorities. But if they try to push further, then we would kind of give them the block. And he mentioned that the Democrats were trying to get more info out of him with January 6th. And he basically said no. But let's listen.
The events of January the 6th, we received a letter from, I believe, congressmen of the Democratic side. And they requested that we would share all the data we had in relation to what they called this uprising. And we checked it with our lawyers, and they said, you better ignore it. But the letter seemed very serious, and the letter said, if you fail to comply with this request, you will be in violation with the U.S. Constitution or something like that.
So Democrats basically threatened him and said, give us more information on January 6th, which also I would say they harassed and, threatened lots of just regular people that affiliated with that in any way. Like they acted like that was the craziest terrorist crime of all time. And that has been so far overblown in my opinion, but he's saying that they were even going at him with that. Here's the interesting part is not only did he say no, but he claims that Republicans threatened him, but on the other side, which is, in my view, interesting to know because I never know how shitty Republicans are, how fake opposition they are, but this makes me, I don't know, look at it in a different light, I guess. Maybe not completely, but it's good to know that they're not completely on the same page about this stuff.
What's funny about it is 2 years, exactly 2 weeks after that letter, we got another letter, a new letter from the Republican side of the Congress. And there we read that if we give out any data according to the previous request, we would be in violation of the US Constitution. So we got 2 letters that said whatever we do would be violating the US Constitution.
So the Democrats said you're violating the U.S. Constitution if you don't give us this data on Americans. And then he said no. And then Republicans said you're violating the U.S. Constitution if you do give them data. So just a window into the world that he probably had to deal with. So many governments around the world saying conflicting things to him. And, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Here's the last clip I found relevant that I'm going to talk a little more. This is him explaining that Google and Apple kind of put even more pressure on him than governments around the world. And if you don't follow the rules of Google and Apple, then they'll kick you off the store and you essentially can't even really have an app. We'll talk about Gab after that because Gab was an app that basically told Apple and Google to go F themselves. And now they're not in the Apple or Google store. So I would assume that Telegram did play ball with Apple or Google somewhat. Like you have to, or else they'll kick you out the store. So I've watched an app get kicked out. So I just assume any app that's in there will tweak their rules somewhat or make some sort of compromise in order to play ball with Apple and Google, who pretty much have close to a monopoly on the application store market. I wouldn't say a complete one, but pretty damn close. Anyway.
So I would say the largest pressure towards Telegram is not coming from governments. It's coming from Apple and Google. Right? So when it comes to freedom of speech, those two platforms, they could basically censor whatever you can read, access on your smartphone.
So, I mean, do you run the risk of being thrown out of their stores?
Exactly. That's what they make very clear, that if we fail to comply with their guidelines.
Once again, the app Gab, gab.com, gab.com, they did not play along. They got kicked out of the store. I forget the exact reason, but if you want to know why Gab got kicked out of the Apple store and the Google store and what they had to do that they weren't willing to do, go try to find an Andrew Torba interview where he explains that. I personally forget what the exact thing is, but I remember the last time I interviewed Andrew, who's the CEO of Gab, I remember that he said essentially, my policy is the First Amendment. If anything overreaches the First Amendment, I'm not interested. So I would guess Telegram played ball to some extent. Clearly not playing enough ball for the fact that France is trying to throw him in prison for decades. With that being said, I guess, I'll try to be as even-keeled as I possibly can. Obviously, I have my own opinions, but if you own an application, governments around the world are going to get involved because everyone's using that. It's similar to a telephone, but now you're sidestepping that, whether it's Telegram or Facebook or any of these messaging platforms that exist out there. Twitter would be considered one, WhatsApp, even Instagram you could message on. People are going to use that to do crazy, evil, terrible things. So that's what governments will tell you that they're doing. Like, we can't just allow everyone to do everything. Like, we need to crack down on crime. That's why Ross Ulbright is in jail. He tried to create a website, I think it was called Silk Road, and it was supposed to be this like freedom libertarian website, but then people are using it for trafficking and drugs and all sorts of crazy, evil stuff, where the government threw him in prison. I mean, there's a lot of libertarians who think he should be out of jail. It's a bold move to create a website trying to be that libertarian. Like, you're going to get in trouble. I'm not saying it's right that he got in trouble. It's a crazy, quest to set out on. Be like, I'm going to do this way. It's like, sheesh. Same with Telegram. It's like, even if it works and you're doing the best that you can, governments around the world are going to be pissed at you because you own something that they don't own. And if you don't sell out as much as Apple and Google, they're just going to keep trying to pry their way into your social media website so they can completely control it. I remember Apple at one point, I don't know if this has changed, but the government wanted the backdoor to Apple after the San Bernardino shooting. And Apple said, no, we can't give it to you because if we give you the backdoor for the shooting, you have the backdoor to Apple and now no one has privacy. I would guess that's the way it is now. I don't know. I'm not a tech expert, but to me, obviously, it seems like this guy was playing somewhat ball, but not enough ball. And just the fact of what Vindman said, the way I'm going to put it up on the screen again, because this was very telling. Of course, he's only one person, but he is a, mainstream figure now when it comes to American foreign policy and the Ukraine war. He mentions that Elon Musk should be nervous because there's intolerance for platforming disinfo and malign influence. And it's like, why are you putting disinfo in there? I mean, the biggest charges he's getting are not disinformation. It's like child pornography. It's, what were the other charges that they're levying against him? Drug trafficking. I could pull it up real quick again. Hold on. Yeah. Organized crime, drug trafficking, fraud. Like, these are the things that he's being heavily charged with, not disinfo. I mean, maybe that's in there somewhere and I didn't read the full court case, but he's making it about that. Elon Musk should be nervous. Why? And here's the question that everybody has. Like, there was problems with all that stuff on Google and YouTube and Facebook and all of the things that they accuse of Telegram. Facebook and Google have had these problems too, because when Google and Facebook control so much stuff, of course they're going to have problems. There's been live streaming shooters on their website. But what the government seems to do is use these events when it goes to a website that they don't control and say, see, this is going on. Now we have to go in. Where with Facebook, it's like they're not going to get in trouble for that. Like, you just Google all the articles or YouTube or Google all the articles of YouTube and Google and Facebook having problems with all of those things, literally every single thing they mentioned there. But they're not getting charged. Like the CEO is not going to get charged with the crime. Like there's, if you take every crime that they've ever found on Facebook and Instagram, they're not charging Mark Zuckerberg with those crimes. And if you take every crime that's ever been on YouTube and Google, they're not charging whoever runs YouTube and Google at this point with those crimes. So it does seem to me, obviously, like it's a unfair prosecution and a political one. And my best guess would be, of course, this is just speculation, that they really want this Ukraine-Russia war, just like they want other wars in the Middle East. Like they really want to go to war with Iran. And the powers that be, they hate they hate Tucker Carlson. They hate Donald Trump. Why? Tucker's not perfect. Trump's far from perfect. He's done so many scummy things. RFK, same thing. I'm not saying he's the worst or anything, but why? Like, what threat do they all run, even though a lot of them play ball in other categories? They all question the Ukraine war and the Russia war. And you could tell now all the things they did to Trump with Russia, the Russia collusion, Russia this, it was an attempt to isolate him, kick anybody out of his staff that wasn't going along with it, and push America, in my view, towards the war that is just fully open now. It was always their plan. I'm not saying Russia's innocent, and I think they could have not invaded. However, America was giving weapons and finance, including Trump was even giving money to Ukraine. But what Trump seemed to do or claims to do, which a lot of us believe, is he's able to balance it a little bit. Like he's not completely giving up on the agenda of the elites, which is why a lot of people don't like him, that say he's a sellout. But at the same time, he seems to, even with like Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, like he definitely did some stuff to escalate, but it never escalated because he claims he's the big boy in the room and says, don't do this. We'll go to war with you. And you don't want that. Joe Biden, on the other hand, it's like he did more and then got us into war, and they wanted that war forever. And Trump didn't get us into that war, at least while he was in office. So to me, that seems to be what Telegram's about. Of course, it could be possible that he was reckless with what he was allowing and what was going on. However, I've read articles and I've seen the egregious missteps that Facebook and Google have taken for a lot of these same crimes. And to me, the reason that they didn't realize that these crimes were happening on their platform is because they're so co-opted by the intelligence communities, or they're so working with the US government and the liberal mainstream narrative that they don't really care about that stuff that much. Like they're more concerned with someone's grandma who talked to somebody who talked to somebody who knew someone who knew somebody who went to January 6th and stood there with the Trump flag. Like they're putting all their effort into trying to find that sort of stuff, or which grandma disagrees with the Ukraine war and doesn't, want to keep funding Ukraine. Like that's where all the energy is of these social media websites. Like during COVID, they were shutting down any group of people that were against lockdowns. Like you couldn't even not be a slave and Facebook got mad at you. It's like, I want to exist normally like a not slave. And they're like, oh, that's a violation of the New Jersey code or states. And, this and that. Like I know certain states they cracked down on because it was against the what the governor said. All this BS that they're doing. It's like, that's why so much of this crap got away. So I just don't believe that they really care about all these crimes so much. If they cared about drug crimes so bad, they could close the border. Do you know how many drugs are coming in across the border? People are now nice. I always like getting kicked out of my own stream. But anyway, boats are just landing on the shore all around the country of just illegal immigrants. Like imagine if Israel just allowed like a boat to come onto its shore. They probably never would do that because it's like you never know who's on the boat. They're at war right now with Iran, Palestine, Lebanon, etc. But America just allows boats to just wash up on shore. I saw one of happening in San Diego and Orange County where like a bunch of people are just running off a boat. It just, no one stops it. We don't have a Navy. Our Navy's deployed to other countries, but we don't even stop our own shore. So I know they don't give a shit about drug trafficking because the border is wide open. They allow people to wash up on our shores. Wouldn't you do that? Like, to me, this seems like a political situation. Of course, maybe they somewhat care about that stuff. But to me, it seems like more about the Ukraine war and the fact that Telegram has played a massive role in disseminating information that they probably don't want out there because they need to keep the money and weapons flowing to Ukraine. Where does this go? Can Ukraine beat Russia? Like, what does beating Russia even look like? How much do they have to drain out of the U.S. taxpayer before it happens? These are questions they don't want people to ask. So that's my best guess. That's my best, opinion. But that's the story. Two things I wanted to do, and then I'll read some comments. But I did this Instagram reel about Tim Walz, and I just want to explain. Obviously, most people agreed with it. They were like, that's alarming. But I did see some people one guy from Canada is like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, bro, stay in Canada. We have the First Amendment. You don't. You're trying to like be a soy boy beta and take away our First Amendment with like these fake linguistics. Like, I'm not dumb. Okay. I'm a poet. I'm a hip hop artist. I know how to use words. You're not impressing me. Like, he went to college and he's like, well, technically. It's like, they always try to do this pseudo intellectual thing where they're like, I'm so much smarter than conservatives. Like, bro, you're not smarter than me. But also, stay in Canada. You can play those little hate speech games over there. But I'm going to address the backlash to this video. Not that it was big or anything, but I want to use my podcast to have these conversations that I don't feel like having on Instagram, because I absolutely can defend everything I said here, and I mean it, and I watched the clip in full context, and I still stand by everything I said, and I don't believe that this is, this is like some sort of game where I'm using it out of context to frame him. I'll explain myself after the video. Here's my Tim Walz Instagram reel.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
There's no guarantee to free speech, and this guy wants to be the vice president of the United States of America. And here's the thing about hate speech and misinformation. I don't like hate, and I don't like misinformation. I like the truth. But if the government hates the truth and the government hates what you're saying and it's true, that can be considered hate speech by the government. And we've already seen them abuse misinformation. For example, if pharmaceutical lobbyists pay off both parties and they have a product that's going to make tens of billions of dollars, and you speak the truth about something they don't want people to know the truth about, they can call that misinformation. We've seen it happen dozens of times over the last couple years. You shouldn't want Kamala Harris or Donald Trump to take away your First Amendment under the guise of hate, which is a broad term that they will and can abuse, or misinformation, which is the same. But for some reason, only Republicans seem to understand this nowadays. I don't know why. Liberals used to be the party of free speech, and Republicans used to want to censor more. I don't know what happened. And Republicans in some cases still censor a little too much for my liking. But to have somebody running as vice president who's admitting he doesn't believe in the First Amendment is concerning. Pay attention and be careful, America. And by the way, shout out to Canadians. I like Canadians. I just don't like Canadians that cry about the U.S. First Amendment. Like, why are you sitting in Canada acting like he didn't say, like, I don't even want to have the conversation with you. Like, just do the Canadian thing. But if you're a base Canadian, appreciate you. Anyway, someone or multiple people pointed out, they're like, oh, Anomaly, I didn't think you'd do that. You took that out of context. He was talking about voting rights. And I watched the full video, and it was about how voters were misleading people. Like, they threw a guy in jail, in prison, for a meme, because the meme was a joke trying to like trick liberals into like not voting on the day or whatever, where, to me, that's like a fine line. Like, obviously I understand how the world works, so I try to be pretty cautious when I do stuff like that, or I don't do stuff like that. You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not your average, like, let me just say anything and joke about everything. I know how the government works. I know they're trying to frame everybody. So it's like, I don't do that shit. With that being said, like, I don't think you should mislead people to where voting polls are, but where do you draw the line between a joke and not a joke? Like, like, it's like comedy. Like, I don't think that person really thought they were going to trick a bunch of people. I think they just thought it was funny, being like, oh, the left is so dumb. And here's my also opinion. Maybe this is unpopular, but if you're a Republican or a liberal and you're so dumb that you get tricked by a meme, like, you're too dumb to vote probably anyway, in my opinion, no matter if it goes left or right. But with that being said, he's like using that as an in, I think, or people misleading people to the voter polls or whatever, as a way to be like, we need to censor that type of speech. But here's my explanation to people that are saying that clip's out of context, excuse me. He said hate speech and misinformation. He didn't have to. What does hate speech have to do with misinformation? Like, misinformation about voting polls is misinformation about voting polls. The word misinformation, you don't have to guess what they mean by the word misinformation. You could just look at all the times that people and liberals like Tim Walz around the world have used it, and in this country. Telling the truth about the COVID vaccine, telling the truth about mandates, standing up against mandates, standing up against lockdowns, liking Donald Trump. I could list like 100 things that they have abused their power to use the word misinformation. And then even if you thought he just used the word misinformation to mean voter misinformation, which to me means you're stupid, he said hate speech before it. He goes, oh, we got to stop hate speech and how that would be under the classification of misinformation. Hate speech, they use racial conversations they don't want to have, religious conversations they don't want you to have, sexual conversations they don't want you to have, gender conversations they don't want you to have. There's jokes that they don't want you to make. Like, these are the things they call hate speech. So hate speech is usually resign for that, and misinformation is usually resigned for like pharmaceutical conversations or you just being wrong about something. So he would have never said hate speech and misinformation if he just meant the voter polls. It's just funny how naive people are. Like, all you have to do is like, why don't you ask Tim Walz, right? If you think I'm taking it out of context, like, ask Tim Walz. Do you think only people that mislead based on voter location should be under the classification of misinformation, or do you think it should also be people who tell people not to get vaccines or whatever? Like, of course, look at the Democratic Party, look around the world, look at the hate speech laws in Europe, look at what they're doing in Canada, look what they're doing in France, look what they're doing in UK, look what they're doing in liberal schools, look what Facebook and YouTube and Google and all of these liberal companies have done over the past 5 years. Look at what they've considered misinformation. Look at what they've considered hate speech. Has Tim Walz ever disagreed with Google's hate speech and misinformation policy? No. Has he ever disagreed with Facebook's hate speech and misinformation policy? No. So this idea, like, how dumb and fake do you have to be like, oh, Tim Walz only wants to censor conversations around voting locations? I want to say the F word so bad, but I won't. You're an effing idiot if that's all you think he wants to censor. The proof of what they censor, if I really wanted to, I could do a lot of things, but if I wanted to, I can make a list of everything: Facebook, Google, YouTube, Instagram, Democrats, lockdown, pharmaceutical stuff. I can make a list of 100 things that they have censored and covered up under the guise of hate speech and misinformation. Do you think if I gave that list to Tim Walz, he would be like, oh, I want to allow all of that hate speech and misinformation that I think is hate speech or misinformation except for voter rolls? Of course not. Of course he agrees with all of that stuff, or else he'd be speaking out against it like Elon Musk or Donald Trump or Republicans or Tulsi Gabbard or myself or RFK or anybody. You know what I'm saying? Jimmy Dore. I'm sure even like people like Kyle Kalinske and freaking what's the guy who people call water buffalo, Cenk Uygur. I'm sure even he's Anna Kasparian. I'm sure even they've spoken against some of the misinformation policies. Not all of them, but some of them. Go find me a clip of Tim Walz complaining about one of the 1,000 times that any liberal company or politician has overpoliced your First Amendment. You're out of your mind if you're a Canadian or American that's like, oh, I don't think he'll really censor that much. You're taking it out of context. Look at what they mean by hate speech and misinformation when they say it, and then apply it and ask them in interviews but they don't do interviews like that because they don't want to tell people what they really think. So it's just so obvious to me. That's my response to anybody dumb enough that thinks that he would only want to censor just a little bit of information. Look around the world at what liberals and Democrats are doing in this country and abroad. Not Democrats, but you get what I'm saying. The liberals in other countries, even the conservatives in other countries, they're trying to move the Overton window and basically criminalize anybody that's conservative, in some cases white, a man. And no, I'm not playing the victim. Oh, I'm a white man, everything's so bad. That's not what I'm saying. Life is fine. I don't care. It doesn't bother me on a personal level. I'm not playing the victim. I'm just saying, like, what does hate speech mean? Well, it means other races can do this, but you can't do this if you're this race. It means this gender can do this, but also if that gender is conservative, then they'll say it's hateful. But if they're liberal, they can be hateful towards you. Like, we already know what these words mean. They've used it thousands of times. Don't act stupid, okay? And it's abused by both sides. It's just Democrats are like 99% worse on this topic, unfortunately. And Trump only passes speech laws for the donors. And people asking if I'm white, I radiate golden. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I'm whatever you want me to be. But I've said my full race a bunch of times. I'm as mixed as I need to be. You play I'm Italian, I'm Polish, I'm Czechoslovakian, and I'm Puerto Rican. I've never taken a DNA test, so I can't tell you what percentage I am. But it is what it is. I only pretend like I don't know English or something if it plays into my favor. I'm extremely European, but then it's like, if I need to, I'm like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, but nobody believes it. I'm just kidding. Anyway, whatever. Make of that what you will. Speaking of which, RFK is joining forces with Trump, and I want to speak to something that I've seen, not to complain, not to cry about it, but to have a conversation about it, because I like on my podcast being able to explain myself. On Twitter, I don't feel like explaining myself. On Instagram, I only have a minute. I would look like the biggest idiot if I was always like, but what I meant was, it's like, dude, just shut up and make a reel. It's a minute long. You got to cry for 30 minutes. So I don't do this to complain here, but I do like to explain myself. And what better place than a podcast? Welcome to the Dreamer Podcast. We got a lot of winners here, a couple losers. It is what it is. You can't win them all. Jokes aside, or maybe not, I tweeted for the first time, and this just shows you how toxic social media is. Once again, not complaining, just being real. I took a 2-month break. I haven't said anything on Twitter because I'm just tired of the whole dynamic of it. But whatever. I retweeted a clip of Trump and RFK, and this is what I said. Okay. I never said RFK was perfect. I never said Trump was perfect, blah, blah, blah. I said Trump should make RFK Jr. the FDA director in his administration. Okay. I've said this for a year now, if not longer. Why? Look who Trump hired for the FDA director last time. He hired, I believe, was it Scott Gottlieb, the pharma guy who went to a Pfizer board after his stay at the FDA. And here's the thing. They knew that he was that, just like the Trump little, I knew you were a snake before you let me in poem that he always does. When Scott Gottlieb got chosen for FDA director, they put out mainstream articles and it said big pharma breathes a sigh of relief. Like they knew this guy was a pharma shill. They're like, Trump picked a phony. So this is all I'm saying. I'm not asking you to go camping with RFK. I'm not asking you to work out with RFK, but we could all use a few push-ups. I'm not telling you to trust RFK. I'm not telling you to not criticize his foreign policy or whatever you're mad at RFK for. I don't care. Maybe you hate his voice. It's kind of messed up, but whatever. I'm just saying he would make a better FDA director. Listen to his speech. That speech explaining the food industry is better than any hater that's going to say this or that. It's better than any speech I've heard probably ever by anyone. And I this is my niche. I like people that talk about this stuff. I'm into health and trying to, not be poisoned by food. But in general, that was one of the best speeches I've ever heard. It not just like blah, blah, blah. I'm going to fix the food industry. Yeah, who cares? Dissecting everything that's wrong with the food and drug industry. Like he knows it. He's very intelligent. He knows more stuff than I know. How would it be a bad thing to put him as FDA director? The last guy was a pharma bro. They're all shills. They're all working probably for big agriculture, big pharma. Let's roll the dice with RFK. Why not? That's all I said. Some idiot loser lady that spends too much time on Twitter. She's got a lot of followers too. Some doctor or whatever. She's like, oh, we lost Anomaly. Oh, you've lost all your credibility. And it's like, oh yeah, all my credibility that I built up over my entire life, the last decade of great work, I just lost it all by sitting off Twitter for 2 months and tweeting that I want RFK to be FDA director or trying to push the Trump administration, who some of them follow me and some of his family follows me, trying to put it out in the universe like I did to get RFK to this point. I'm not saying I'm responsible, but I've been putting it out there. Even if I'm not responsible, I've tried to make it a thing. It's like I've lost all credibility. Yeah, that's what happened by saying I want him to be FDA director. I'm sorry, but some truthers, they spend way too much time online and they're no, it's not Dr. Lupus. No, it's not that lady. It's some other doctor. I didn't even know who it was. It's like some people, they're so self-righteous and they're so smug, they get lost in like the opposition where it's like, I've never asked people to not question RFK. I could list 5 things that I didn't like that RFK did. There, I didn't vote for him. I wasn't going to vote for him. Like I'm just happy that maybe he could get in a role possibly with the will of the people. That's it. But this is what people do. This is how people act. It's just like so goofy. And then I see so many people on Twitter too, where they're just like complaining so hard. They're like, I can't believe, this and that with Trump and RFK. And it's like, oh yeah, Dr. Jane Ruby, whatever. God bless the lady. But it's like, for her to say I lost all credibility because I tweeted one thing in 2 months that bothered her. It's like, go touch grass, go jog. Like you're losing your mind. You're turning into a psychopath on Twitter. With that being said, I've been one of the biggest, I wouldn't even say critics of Trump. I just speak the truth. I don't pander to a political party. I'm not going to turn, I'm not going to get lobbied into government and people, I know so many influencers have turned into politicians who've made millions basically just being like stands and, tokens. I'm not that guy. I always speak my mind. I always speak the truth. With that being said, I'm not a black pillar. And even though I've been accused of that 1,000 times, I never am. Like we all got to deal with life as it comes. And the truth of this election, like in my perfect world, right? If I could make a fantasy, first of all, everything would be organic. There'd be gumdrops falling from the sky made of like trace minerals that tasted like apples. Like I have dreams too. But anyway, if I could choose, I would make Thomas Massie the president. I think he's the only Republican that I fully trust or trust over 95%. And that's what I would want. That's not an option. So what is the reality of the situation we have? It's Trump versus Kamala. Listen, I hope Jill Stein does well, and I hope, the libertarians do well, even though he's a weirdo. It's like, go knock yourself out. But the truth is, it's Kamala or Trump. That's the truth of right now. 2 years ago, it could have been different. A year ago, could have changed. Now, it's Kamala or Trump. It is like, I'm not a liar. Like some people, they're like, oh, I'm still voting for RFK. I'm still voting for RFK. Okay, why? What does that do? I don't care. Like, if it's a protest vote because you hate Trump and Kamala, sure, vote for RFK. But like, there's people that are so delusional that they think RFK is still going to be president, even though he dropped out to endorse Trump. They're like, no, he's still on a few ballots. If he really thought he could win, or he wanted to keep running and pretend this fantasy for all these people that have lost their mind, like these people, he would just run. He wouldn't have endorsed Donald Trump. He didn't have to do that. I'm actually shocked he did. I hoped he did, but I can't believe he actually did. Like, you really think he's going to be like, I don't go vote. I'm not asking you to like vote the way I want you to vote. It's just like, people are so delusional. They live on social media, which I do as well. I'm not like above it. Like, oh, you guys live on social media, huh? Yeah. So have I for the last 5 years, and made a living off it, but in general, and I spend too much time on there in my free time. But, it's like, I understand if you want RFK to win. I understand if you think he's a better person and a better president than Trump. But if he drops out and endorses Trump, you've lost your mind. Like, you need to almost see a therapist. If you're like, he's still going to win, I'm going to vote for him and he's going to win. It's just it's like almost like QAnon, where like, it's not all fake, but it's like, oh, trust the plan. It's like, all right, bro, like RFK's secretly going to win, even though he dropped out and told everybody to vote for Trump. Oh yeah. He's not, I'm not saying he shouldn't or couldn't in the future. He's not winning this election. We all know it. Like, you're losing your mind if you think he's still going to win the election. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying you can't vote for him, but like, if you're going to lash out at me and other people on social media, like, you don't know, he's still going to win. You remind me of someone in a straitjacket that's like, ooh, and you're like, okay, Jennifer, yeah, go tell Twitter. Yeah, for sure. And then they throw you in the back of the truck and then put you in a mental institution. Like, that's the reality of it. So if the situation is Trump versus Kamala, you could do one of many things. You could vote for Jill Stein or that weirdo libertarian guy if that's a protest vote. You could vote for RFK as a protest vote. You could vote for Dr. Shiva as a protest vote. Or you could not vote. Like, there's all sorts of things you can do. But if you want to impact the election, first of all, you probably have to live in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or some of the states that actually matter the most. I'm not telling people not to vote, you look at the two sides and you say, okay, now I'm going to pick the one that I want. You don't have to do this, but it's like, here's my thought process is I see where people are coming from, but and I'm going to make a whole video of why I'm voting for Trump this election, even though he's annoyed me. I didn't care for him in the primary because he was being annoying. It's like, there's a lot on the line, and I don't fully trust Trump to fix all of it, but there are little tangible things that I think he'll be better at. And my thought with Trump over Kamala is this. Trump's sibling, I won't say siblings, I'm sorry. Trump's, his family and his sons, they interact with a lot of people. They're on social media. People in his campaign, he's got people like Lindsey Graham who suck. He's got some good people. Like, Trump's all over the place. I'm not asking people to trust him. I'm not asking people to like him. But with Trump, there is customer service there. He cares what people think. A lot of times Trump cares what liberals think, and he turns into a liberal to please them. But with Kamala, there's no customer service. Like, at least with Trump, say he passes an anti-Semitism hate speech law that I think is against the First Amendment, or he starts sending our money to overseas like every politician ever. I could point to that and be like, I don't like that. This sucks. With Kamala, everything is smoke and mirrors. Like, it's hard to even pin down what she's even doing because she's such a phony. Like, do you even know who Tim Walz is? Like, we know, but it's like when they're doing policy or they're doing anything, there is no like saying anything to, like, they're not going to do what you want them to do. If you're conservative, if you're libertarian, if you're right wing, if you're pro, I would say criticism to big pharma, Trump is not your guy. It's not like he's your best friend, but is Kamala going to do anything for you? Like, you're getting nothing out of that. So my thought is a combination of both. And this is what I've always done. If I'm inspired to vote, I'll go vote. If I'm not, then I won't vote. That is only a small part of the equation to me. Like, sure, go vote, whatever. But at the end of the day, the problem is no offense, but that lady on Twitter who got mad at me and others that are obsessed with Trump, to me, it's just two coins of like emotional people. Like, if you really still think RFK could win, you're so emotional that you're just a liar. Like, you're lying to yourself, you're lying to everyone, you're acting erratic, you're getting mad when they don't like believe your delusion. If you think Trump is like amazing, he's going to save you, or you're critical of Trump now and you're so mad that RFK is like, all these people seem the same to me. Like, yeah, we might agree on some stuff. Like, I agree with Trump supporters on a lot. I agree with Trump critics on a lot. I agree with RFK supporters on a lot. But the truth is, like, it is what it is at this point. I'm not asking you to like buy into it, but the problem is everyone's so damn emotional that nobody could get anything done, because it's like Trump supporters, they just think he's like doing everything all the time and he's not. So there's no pressure going in on Trump. The people that are like just frantically upset all the time, they just want to throw everything out and just be like, I want it my way. Well, yeah, so do I, but that's not the way it's going to be. So like, how do you tangibly get results? Like, you gotta, to me, it's somewhere in the middle. Never accept a lie. Never think it's cool what Trump did with big pharma. Call out RFK if he's shilling foreign policy or if he's good on it. Like, just be honest. Like, no, I'm not asking anybody to do things or say things that they don't agree with. Like, be honest. Tell the truth about everything you dislike about them. But at the same time, don't act so psychotic that nobody wants to listen to you. Like, if you followed me for 3 years, for example, or 4 or 5 years, right? I've worked with a lot of people. I've had a lot of people on my show. You're going to say I lost all credibility because I'd rather RFK be an FDA director than a pharma guy named Scott Gottlieb. I've lost all credibility. What are you accomplishing by saying that to me? I don't want to see you. I don't like you. You sound insane to me. Like you're not, it's for your own ego. It's like, I think I'm better. I'm going to do all this, and you're not doing shit, and I'm sure everybody's contributed to some extent, but that's how everybody acts. Like, when I told the truth about COVID stuff, a lot of Trump supporters tried to throw me off the boat. They're like, screw you. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you guys are delusional. Like, I'm not. And it was different in 2020 than it is now, because Trump was actually in office and the country was under lockdown. So everyone's like, wait till November. I'm not saying you should ever wait, but like, people that are like, wait till November now, like, let Trump win and then we'll do this. It makes more sense now. I'm not saying you have to, but like, Biden's the president, and it's like Trump has no power. When Trump is the president and everyone's telling me to just ignore reality for 7 months and we're in a lockdown and they're just printing trillions of dollars, it seems insane to me. It seems like a trick to get me to not pay attention to reality because of Donald Trump. So that's just my perception of it. But in general, I'm just very pragmatic with everything I do. And I feel like people are either one way or the other, like way too damn hard. And that's the issue with so many things in this country. Like, people are way too liberal. They're way too Republican, not saying the values, but they think it's like a video game. It's like, Trump's the hero, Trump's the villain. People ask me, like, they're like, do you really think that there are a lot of liberals? And I know that if you go to certain suburbs in certain states, like, it's packed with Biden and Kamala stuff. It's not because they're so popular and amazing, but the truth is, like, suburban people and like older women, single and just ones that run the household, not all of them, but some, like, they like Joe Biden or Kamala, not because there's so much to like, but they're constantly being fed propaganda. They think Trump is the ultimate villain, and they use him as like what they don't want. Like, they don't even know that much because they're constantly just watching CBS or NBC, or like, I'm not saying it's everybody, but like, there are millions of older people that do feel that way, but they're not seeing things logically. It's like, Trump's the villain, Republicans are the villains. I'm the good guys. Most Democrats, like, I know people that I have friends that their parents are Democrats and whatever. A lot of times these are intellectuals and, I would say academics. And the thing is, they're just like, there's a lot of smart Republicans. There's also a lot of really dumb, annoying Republicans. I'm not saying everybody, but it's like the pseudo intellectual liberal, they have too big of an ego to ever admit Republicans are right about anything, because they're like, I'm smarter than those dummies. I'm smarter than people in middle America. I'm smarter than that guy. Like, I went to school. I'm smart. And the truth is, like, if you're smart like myself, my intelligence isn't an opposite of someone else. Like, if the truth is on Trump's side, the truth is on Trump's side. If, Democrats are doing something good, I could admit it. I don't have this massive ego where it's like, I have to oppose the dumb people because I'm so smart. And that's what both sides are doing. Most Democrats, they're just pseudo intellectuals who can't admit Democrats have lost their freaking minds. They're nothing like they were 30 years ago. Democrats are wrong about like 99% of policy. Everything's batshit insane. It's ridiculous. And then a lot of Republicans, like, they can't figure certain stuff out because they just watch Fox News and Dan Bongino. And it's this left versus right paradigm where it's like, if the right is wrong about stuff or Trump is sold out on stuff, you're never going to hear it to people that would probably lick the dirt off his shoes. And it doesn't mean he's a bad guy. It just means like, people are so stubborn. They like, and that's even if you're like an anti, pharma truther and stuff, like, are you so psychotic at this point that you're going to throw me out because I said I want RFK to be FDA director? I still do. I think he'd make a better FDA director than a pharma lobbyist. What if he does a bad job? I don't know. They all do bad jobs. So roll the dice with RFK. That's what I want to put out into the world. I'm not a doomer. I'm not a gloomer. Put it out in the world. The pharmaceutical and agriculture industry has run our food into the ground for the last 40 years. Why not give a man who could sit there and talk about the food industry for 17 minutes and do a better job than anyone I've ever seen? Why not give him that role? I'm discredited. I'm not asking RFK to lead the war in Israel and Palestine. I'm not asking him to be the Secretary of State. I'm not asking him to be, hire judges. Like, I would probably never vote for RFK because he'd probably pick liberal judges. And I think Trump, although he delegates it, he picks better judges than the average Democrat. So like, I think about everything pragmatically. It doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and slop up whatever Trump is selling. The reality is, like, that's what the election's about. I'm voting for Trump, and I hope he puts RFK as the FDA director. And we have this energy now. And I'm not saying you have to trust all these characters, but like Tulsi Gabbard, all these people, like, they're finally breaking the mold. It's not to say that she's your best friend, but it's like, now's the time to push Trump in the right direction, in my view. Like, all these people are coming out of the woodworks. He's now willing to negotiate because he really badly wants to win the election. It's like, it's time to start pushing him into the direction you want him to be pushed in my view. But I see the same kind of character flaws in everybody, whether it's liberal or conservatives. And I'm not a perfect person. I'm far from it. But it's like, everyone's so emotional and stubborn. And it's like, just as a case study, not to complain, just as a case study, I took a break from Twitter for 2 months. Why? I make money on Twitter now. I could make thousands of dollars that I put aside, which is probably stupid, but it's for my mental and physical health. I was like, I don't like Twitter anymore. Why don't I like Twitter anymore? Because everything I think, I just type. It's easier to type something than it is to say something. It's a lot harder to say something crazy to someone than it is to type something crazy to someone. I wake up in the morning. I'm just seeing all these opinions. I agree, disagree. Like, my life became just a series of jumbled thoughts, and it was driving me nuts. Like, it was like, yeah, I was getting a lot of views and tens of millions of people, but it's like, at what cost? And then it's like, every time I say something, do I want to just read 50 comments of like 10 crazy cat moms who are mad at me, like some Trump supporter who's mad at me, some lady that's like, oh, you've lost on credibility? Like, that's what Twitter is. It's like, it's just like throwing your opinion out to the world. A lot of great people see it. A lot of great people agree. Some great people disagree. But for the most part, it's like throwing it into the ocean, and the crabs just, and it's just like, okay, like, I know what I think. You know what I think. At this point, pretty much everybody knows what I think. My thoughts have not radically changed over the last 5 weeks that they were a year ago. So why do I need to keep tweeting my opinions about everything out? Like, I don't need to do that. I'm in a financial place where I'm not desperate for the money. I'm not desperate for the attention or fame. I'll turn down reaching tens or hundreds of millions of people every couple of months because I just don't care. I want the mental stability of not having that happen. I say one thing. I'm like, you know what? This is not saying it's this or that. I just want Trump to put RFK as the FDA director. And that's the response you get, because people are losing their minds on social media in their little niche market. They're yelling at people all day. I'm fixing the country. I'm really helping something. And it's like, you end up turning on your own people. And this is what I'll say. Of course, there's elites. And of course, there's different groups of people that might hate you. People that might hate you for your religion. People that might hate you for your politics. People that might hate you for your ethnic group. But I do stand true to this, and I'm not giving an excuse to people who hate you, but it's like, people in your own camp will screw you over worse than your worst enemy sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Like, of all the things going on, it's like, who's even in your camp? Is your camp someone that's so fickle that they would literally try to like burn your entire existence because you tweeted something they didn't understand, or they considered you saying something that logically made sense as you selling out or whatever? And it's like, that's a lot of the truther community. It reminds me of it's not like that big of a complaint, but it's just the truth. I used to do like lyrical hip hop, like when I was 19, 20, 21, 22. I still do, by the way. I still think I'm very good. But anyway, that's all I did. And I had a pretty big following on YouTube. I got a couple million views. I had hundreds of thousands of song downloads. Like in 2008, I was a well-known underground rapper. That's kind of an oxymoron, but I was rising the ranks of somebody that wasn't mainstream, and people knew who I was, especially in the lyrical hip hop community. In many ways, the lyrical hip hop community has some of the worst fans. Why? It's mostly dudes. As a guy, it's better to have more girl fans, but it's like everybody's complaining because it's so lyrical and it's so, your rhyme schemes matter and your flow matters. Everybody just criticizes every little thing, where it's like, if you're LL Cool J or you're some rapper that can barely even spell, nobody expects anything from you. So it's like you do anything and it's like, oh, I guess that was good because I guess the other thing was good. But with the lyrical rap community, I'm not complaining, but like go to some event and then go to like a lyrical rap event. I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world. There's some great people there, but that's to me like the truther community. There's a lot of parallels, not crying about it, but it's like, it's never enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, never compliment anybody ever, never compliment RFK, never compliment Trump, just sit there and complain every day on Twitter. No, I do journalism. I'm not even complaining about Trump. I'm just speaking the truth to something he's lying about because he's selling out to lobbyists or becoming a politician. It's not like this massive criticism. It's just, I'm not a liar. I'm good at my job. I'm not a bullshit artist. Like, I don't know what to do, but you'll lose so many people in this community if you just say one thing, like, and that's like the lyrical community as well for me. It's not a massive complaint. I'm just speaking out loud where it's like, what actually matters, like, I like my show. I appreciate y'all. I'm grateful that people are listening, but taking, like, when you don't post on Twitter, you're like, it's not even a part of your life. I have Instagram, I have Facebook, or I'm doing other stuff. I post one thing on Twitter and then it's like, I get some like lashing out at you. No, I can't want RFK is FDA director. No, that's that my whole credibility is lost, right? And here's another thing that I'll say too. If you're a truther, right, and I'm speaking the truth, and you say I lost all credibility, it's factually incorrect. Like, I didn't lose all credibility. You could say I should or something, but it's like that tweet, I lost like no credibility, and like I've made 5 videos since then. Everybody likes it. I'm like, I didn't lose. My whole career's not done because of that tweet. Like, you're saying you're a truther, but then you're saying you lost all credibility with that. It's literally a lie, like it's what you want for me because you are so mad at that take for some reason. Like, I don't even know why. It's just, you get what I'm saying? It's just kind of weird. So taking a step back, I'm sorry to keep talking about this, but I'm really not sorry because I think that everybody uses social media constantly, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter. Like, everyone's always on social media, and I'm having these conversations publicly, not simply as a massive complaint, just as like a public, psychology / conversation where like everybody's doing this stuff like it's so normal. Like, I'm on here all the time. I'm an activist. I'm doing this. I'm researching. I'm educated. And it's like, okay, be educated. I'm not asking people to be dumb, but I think everybody needs to really consider what they're doing because nobody wants to admit that they don't need to be doing all that they're doing. I'll use an example for myself. I was using Twitter way too much. I don't have to use it at all, but like I was doing too much on Twitter because I was just having conversations and debates, and my time is very limited. So it's like if I'm spending 5 hours arguing with people on Twitter, like I was a couple years ago during the pandemic, I could tell myself with my ego, like, oh, this matters so much. I'm an anomaly. I'm having these debates on Twitter. But the truth is, it's a giant waste of my time. I'm wasting my time. I'm wasting your time. I'm wasting your energy. You're reading it. You're like, what the hell is he arguing with these people for? It's a massive waste of all of our times, and it's not helpful. But that takes humbleness to be like, I'm not like this is not that important. Like taking 2 weeks, 3 weeks off of like social media. Some people, nobody knows what I'm doing, right? But then it's like, because I have skills in other things, like every time like I do a deal for social media consulting, like I'm putting time towards that to help someone else's business, and then I'm getting paid for it. I have other ways of getting paid. I'm not throwing this out the window, and I'm so grateful for it, but it's like, oh, you're going to lose this and that if you don't do this. It's like, I just made more money by doing less. Like and I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying every move you make like has a consequence, like putting in work, doing this, doing that. So if you're spending hours a day on Twitter, or we all are, whatever social media, I just am trying to say, have a conversation with yourself and ask, like, is this a good use of my time? Like, is it worth it? Because it's so easy to be like, yeah, I need to post 50 Instagram stories a day because I'm, beating up the deep state for Trump, or like, I have to argue with all these people I used to like on Twitter every day because I'm fighting the establishment. But then it's like, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we got to be honest. Like, it's not saying you have to stop completely, but for me, it was like, I got to spend way less energy arguing with people on Twitter. And then it got to a point where I thought I need to just stop posting on Twitter because every post is an argument. You know what I'm saying? You could say the sky is blue and someone will say, shut the F up. The sky is red, you snake. And you're like, geez, bro, I just had a good day. Oh, good day? How could you have a good day when Palestinians are dying? It's like, I'm sympathetic to the cause. It's just like, what do you want me to do? Like cry every day? Like the world is crazy. I heard there's crazy shit going on in the Congo. People are dying in Chicago every weekend. I'm not saying to not talk about it, but it's like, you can't say shit on Twitter without somebody jumping down your throat. So for myself, it's like, I just don't want to participate in it. I'll post memes on Facebook, barely read the comments, and it seems to be a little better. Post my Instagram reels, keep it moving. Like, it's just a better workflow for me. But I implore everybody to ask yourself, like, whatever you're doing, is it making me happy? Is it making me healthy? Is it a good use of time? Like, is it fun? Is it helpful? And if all of those are no, then it's like, it's time to, it's time to spend less time doing that and more time doing other stuff. And, that's where I've been at. I like doing my live streams. I like making reels. There's things I like doing, but Twitter, I just don't miss Twitter. I still get my information from Twitter. I still use it as a service as far as like, I think it's one of the best, if not the best news application. Like Twitter has been, before Elon Musk bought it, I was using Twitter for news my entire career. Like Twitter is where I get almost everything personally. I still use it. I just don't feel like communicating on it anymore personally. I think that's the one flaw of Twitter. Is it's the pro and the con. The pros are astronomical. Twitter's a great platform. They censor it not that much. It's great. But the con is that everything's an argument. Like everything's a text-based argument. I think Instagram has a live stream. This is live. Like it's a little more pleasurable. Is that pleasurable? Is that the right thing? Pleasant probably would make more sense. Pleasurable sounds a little perverted. Like it's a pleasurable experience. No, I'm just kidding. It's a word. I meant pleasant and I said pleasurable, so I thought I'd make a joke about it. But yeah, anyway. Someone said Telegram is definitely compromised now. If it's in the App Store, I'm guessing he bent the knee on certain things months ago or years ago. And it's just never enough. That's a sign. It's creepy stuff. And that's another thing with Trump. I still don't trust him. I still think he'll be sneaky, but it's like, I just want him to win. And then I don't trust the Democrats. And I'm not like one of these boomers that just says this all the time, like for no reason. I truly believe like if the Democrats could, they'd put you in jail for hate speech. If the Democrats could, they would tell you the truth is misinformation to your face and hold you on trial. Trump would probably allow that to happen for his donors under one subject that I don't feel like talking about, but he'd also, I feel like he does it, but then if it started happening, he'd be like, whoa, this is a little too far, like, or maybe not. Maybe he would sell out too. I have no idea, but it's like, I just, to me, the Democrats are the way greater of two evils and the Republicans are the lesser two evils. And Trump's cabinet seems more open than it was, or at least like there's more momentum there. So I want him to win. And then, we could play ball then, but I don't know if people are capable of like seeing things the way they are. Like everybody, like if Trump wins, it's probably going to be just like Democrat drama constantly. And Trump's going to be like, whoa. And then people are going to be like, oh my God, remember JFK Jr.? And it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to be like 4 more years of like just madness. But all this could be so simple. If everyone just like chilled out, this is like an ideal world, but Democrats, Republicans, like take a step back from your ego. Take a step back from your opinions and emotions and team sports and just look at everything, and make a decision. Like people can't do that. Everything's got to be so dramatic. It's like, definitely, I think in this country, it's like the sports team, red, blue, liberal, Republican battle is just like people hate each other, And this is why I'm not an expert on anything. I guess some things I'm an expert on, but in general, it's like, I'm not trying to tell you what to do with your life, but I don't believe you should spend that much energy hating. Like for me, hating is an energy drain. I hate hating in a way. I don't know if that made sense, but like if you just hate the left and the left hates the right, like you're spending way too much of your personality and energy pushing against the other side instead of just being yourself. And then you look at some liberals and they have no personality. They have no personality because their whole personality is hating Trump. And then there's a lot of right wingers, like they also have no personality. Their whole personality is like hating libtards and loving Trump. They can't even go to like a holiday without like, oh, I need the Trump shirt again for for Christmas. It's like, spend Christmas with your family, talk about Christ a little bit. Like, I'm not, like, you don't gotta make everything that. I'm not saying to not pay attention, but everyone wants to like identify by what they're not, and it just leads a bunch of like NPCs running around just like ha 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 ha. Like, that's the energy, and it's just like, okay, what are we just going to do this for the next 50 years? And then when I see stuff like this, I'm getting somewhere with this. I know it seems drawn out, but when you see the left just hates the right just hates the left. A lot of these truthers and activists, they're just like freaking out if you don't fully agree with them. It makes you realize you're like, everything's not all it's cracked up to be. So what can I do? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's where the power is. It's like not in what you can't do and not in what you hate. The power's in like, what can I do? Like, what can I do better? And what can I actually achieve and contribute? That's where I'm at. Like, I'm not spending that much energy hating on everybody all the time. It's like, you just got to find your lane and do it, because the reality is these groups and teams you think you're on, they're not really your team. Like, like so many Republicans, in my opinion, they're so ripe for getting Fed trapped because they're so into these narratives that the news is telling them and Republicans are telling them, where, I agree with everybody that January 6th was overhyped and they're exaggerating about it and it was like a setup. But the thing is, it's just too easy to set up Republicans, like, because they're like, oh, like you talk to like the average Republican uncle at like a barbecue and they're freaking out. They're civil war, blah, blah, blah. Like, they're easy to set up for the feds. They're easy to set up for the media because they're so angry. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you can be righteously upset with the way the country's going, but if you're emotionally angry, just lashing out at stuff, you're going to get tricked because you're not even able to point out your own team's tricks. Like, it's like, I said to vote for Trump, not follow him, on a path of he's selling pharmaceutical vaccines. Like, at that point, you should stop immediately trusting him and stop following him. Like that was to me the huge sign, because I got caught up in the Trump stuff too, and because he was crushing. I'm like, I like great stuff. Trump was a great politician, so I was like crushing. The second I saw him doing all that weird stuff, I was like, okay, I don't trust him anymore. I'll vote for him, but I don't trust him. And everyone's like, oh, no, and then they get set up. It's like, that's what happens when you're just screaming and hating the other side and not, analyzing your own side, because that's like, there's just so much power in not being that pissed off and like angry and emotional at something else. Because that's how they get the left. It's the same psychology. They're a bunch of people that used to be smart. They went to school and they think they're so much better than middle America. They think they're so much better than Trump supporters. And they look at the most annoying Trump supporters and they say, I'm so much better than them. I can't be them. I don't want to be on their team because I was in the 70s and 80s and I was fighting the wars and blah, blah, blah. Like, they don't want to give up that nostalgia of like the left's crushing the right. So they can't admit that the right's actually right about stuff. And then most people on the right, it's like, you could dive full in deep and be like MAGA, 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 and they'll eat it up in a second. But if you're like a reasonable right, people get pissed off on you. And to me, that's why Republicans get tricked so much too. It's like, they'll take like a Hillary Clinton supporter, like Democrat operative, that's like Trump. And then everyone's like, oh my gosh, let's give him platforms. Let's put him on Fox News. This guy used to be like a gay liberal. And now he's a gay conservative. And he used to be a military guy. Now he's our military guy. And it's like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't trust somebody that had an awakening. All I'm just saying is like, it's like Republicans are so like they would rather you be like Trumped out, even if you're lying or even if you're just like an emotional liberal who turned into an emotional conservative. They want that because they're an emotional conservative. Like Thomas Massey, him and Tucker get popular over time because they're, cool and they get their flowers eventually. But it's like most Republicans hated Thomas Massey when Trump said to hate Thomas Massey. So it's like, it's like the righteous are often rejected more than the phony. Like, you're better off being like an emotional, crazy Democrat turned into an emotional, crazy Trump supporter than you are like a reserved, like conservative Christian libertarian like Ron Paul or Thomas Massey sometimes, because it's like people want themselves. They want to see themselves. And like, that's where I see a lot of the stuff going. It's like, do you really like me, or do you just want to like me when I agree with everything that you say? But that's life. I'm not like opposed to it. I'm just thinking out loud. Someone said enough is enough, brother. About what though? What's enough about? I don't like when people say that. I don't know. Like, yeah, I don't want them to throw the Telegram CEO in jail. I want them to stop being sneaky and political and all these things. But then it's like, okay, how do we achieve them? And then you just do it. I don't know. Like we were like, people just want to like slam their hands on the table. And then it's like, okay, now what? Like, what did that do? Like, it didn't do anything. It made you feel like I'm more righteous because I'm madder than you are now. You're like, okay, I guess. Someone said Thomas Massey's the only honest one in the house. Yeah, he's the best for sure. He's the man. Someone said people need to stick to facts. Here's another thing too. Like when you say, and I'm not knocking it, I'm just thinking out loud. When you're like, people need to do this and need to do that. It's like saying RFK needs to be president when he's not going to be. I'm not once again, not knocking. I'm just saying like people aren't going to do that. That's the reality I'm coming to. Like, people, if I had it my way, everyone would be jacked. America would win every gold medal at the Olympics and there would be no crime, but that's not America. So sometimes you just got to act accordingly where it's like, I want this to happen, but it's not the reality. And it's not the reality. This is the sobering awakening. Is like, it's not the reality in this country, not just because the left is crazy, but it's like, it takes two to tango and they have the perfect game to just trick both sides. I lean more right. The right makes more sense. I want Trump to win. I agree with, RFK and Tulsi Gabbard more than Tim Walz. Like that's what I am. But I see everything I see anyway. And it's like, that's how the cycle keeps continuing. So, it's like, I want so many things to be true, but I just don't see it happening, So then I just act accordingly. Like I don't know when people are going to do certain things. I'm not sure. But in the meantime, what you can control is yourself. That's the only thing you really can control. Someone said, I could see why Anam's a rapper. I dropped a verse on what's it called? Don't eat fake meat. I put it on Instagram. I think some people were not impressed, but others, they were surprised. Now I'll tell you this, because it's a podcast, I could speak more. It's interesting because when I first started rapping, I'm just going to walk you through real quick, but I won't take that long. When I first started rapping, I knew like at parties and stuff when I was like a teenager, I knew nobody I had like long hair, like a Beatle at the time. I knew nobody wanted me to rap because it's like, why is this white kid rapping with the Beatles haircut? Like it doesn't really make sense. So I knew I had to be so good. And I always earned my respect because I'm a good freestyler. So the thing is, like, I would rap about things in the room so they knew it was real, because anybody could just have a line that they wrote and it's like, oh, that's okay. But I would like point out things in the room. I'd rap about the leaf and the thing. And by the end of it, like, even if someone was hood, they were like, oh, he's good. Like I'm not saying everybody liked me, but like I never had issues because I was never a fake and I always earned my respect. Then when I came out, I got a lot of views online. My lyrical content was very, people liked it. And when I had meetings at labels, I remember one guy said to me when I had a meeting when I was in my 20s in New York, he goes, what I like about you more than MGK and Eminem, and I'm not saying I'm better than them, I'm just saying this is what he told me. He's like, I like that you're not trying to act black. That's what he told me. He's like, I feel like MGK is trying to act black and Eminem's always tried to act black. He's like, you're just being yourself. That's what he told me. If Eminem or MGK says this guy said it, not me. But with that being said, I was like, I don't know. I just got to be good in my own way and not like, I wasn't trying to be anyone else or whatever. But that was like, I was doing fine. Like I wasn't famous, but like I always had my respect and like, I never really had any issues. Like, I never had like people being like this and that. Of course, some people didn't like it, but now and I'm not complaining about it, but because I made a huge name for myself in news, now when I post raps, people are like, shut the fuck up, excuse my language, shut up and go do the news. Like I never had that before because I was never known as a news host. I was always known as a hip hop artist. I was doing well as a hip hop artist, but my news got way bigger, which is fine. I have no problem with it. I'm super grateful. But now when I drop raps to my page, people are like, they almost like look at me like I shouldn't be doing it. Like, why are you oh, you're just another guy who's trying to do too much. You're just another guy who's doing that. And it's like, you could say that, but how come when I step on stage at a festival with 10,000 people, how come the whole crowd's cheering? How come I get huge applauses? How come I could, like, how come I'm sick live? Like, how come I feel like my live show is tremendous? I feel like I could compete with the best of them and rap impressive things that could win over any crowd. Like you say, I shouldn't do it because you're not used to me doing it. And you might not like it, which is fine. But it's just interesting because now when I drop a sick rap, some people, like I have friends that are musicians and doing well and they're on tour and they look at it and they're like, some of them, they're like, wow, that was one of the sickest verses I've ever heard. But then other people, they're trying to in their head try to figure out why it's not good, because it's like, oh, he didn't just drop one of the sickest verses of the year. How is that guy gonna do that? It's like, I just did it though. So, I have a little chip on my shoulder, but I know a lot of people were surprised by it, but other people, they're trying to figure out in their head like why. It's like, who else, like the Kendrick dropped a sick Drake diss, that was fire. But the thing is, like, the content, nobody's talking about the things I'm talking about except for like the Christian conservative rappers. Tom McDonald's the most famous, but it's like the flow, the content, like nobody's doing that. So I kind of get off on it in a little bit, where it's like people are like, oh, don't do that. I never had that issue before, but I'm determined to just keep dropping fire verses and fire tracks, and eventually people will figure it out that I could do both of them. But I just noticed that now it's like a different dynamic than when I was growing up. Someone said it's a brutal industry. Well, I don't even want to get in the industry. That's the thing. It's like, I don't like, the industry hates me. The industry hates me for my politics. I'm not going to like get into specifics because it's not necessary. But when the Kanye thing was going on, it's like I had an industry guy reach out to tell me like, what did I mean by that? So it's like, they're not interested in my music. They're interested in telling me to shut up about social and political issues. You understand what I'm saying? Like, my success is going to come from the people. There is no Anomaly could get signed now, because I had multiple record offers when I was 21 and had no audience. I have 1 billion views, millions of followers. I do shows for tens of thousands of people. I don't have a single offer. Why? No, dude, no label is going to sign me. They know who I am. They hate me. You know what I'm saying? Here's somebody who's breaking the programming. Here's somebody who's not a sellout. There's not enough, like, they want an artist who just doesn't do anything. Look at B.O.B. B.O.B., incredibly talented, Airplanes in the Night Sky. He had billions of views. He said the earth was flat, and everybody made him look crazy. The media smeared him, and he fell off. And I'm not saying he fell off. I love his mixtapes called Elements. I think he's great still. It's just like everything they gave him, they took him away, and it's like they Kanye'd him before they Kanye'd Kanye, and it had nothing to do with that. Although if you look it up, apparently the ADL was mad at him too, because he said something about that. So I guess it maybe was about that a little bit, but it was also like him questioning the shape of the earth. And it's like everybody just dropped him. Like, what is saying the earth is flat or round have to do with your music? Like, if Lil Wayne came out and said the earth is a cube, like, is his raps not fire anymore? Like, it has nothing to, I don't care. Like, it doesn't even matter to me. But it does matter to the industry. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, B.O.B. had everything, and then they took everything away from him because they're like, you're breaking the narrative too much. So I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, like, oh, the industry's tough. Guys, I'm blacklisted 11 times from the industry. I guarantee you, if you brought up my videos or you brought up my news analysis, that most major labels have seen my stuff, and they're beyond not interested in working with me. Not only do they not want to work with me, they probably don't even want my videos like circulating. I've had other celebrities message me and be like, well, you were in my feed. I was like, oh, what's up? I don't like that you were in my feed. Dude, shut up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not even gonna say who it was, but it's like, you're mad that I was in your feed? Oh no, my propaganda has been broken. I saw one true thing all day and I'm mad at it. Okay, go cry to someone else, bro. I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, it's like I'm not seeking validation from the industry. It's not even possible at this point. I just want to drop classics, and I don't even know what I want. I just want to drop fire stuff, and the right people to know that it's fire. I don't want a deal. I can't get a deal. I don't even think it's that desirable anymore. I just want to drop a few classics on them real quick and get the respect from the right people, not the wrong people, and then I'm good. Then I'll go back to my news. Someone says, serious question. Were you alive during the last pandemic before COVID? I don't know. I mean, I think they tried to make one with like the West Nile virus or something, or like, what was the other one that they said when I was like playing soccer as a kid? I remember they were like, oh, there's swine flu. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go play soccer now. Like, nobody cared. And I never got sick, but thank you, P. Noah. Appreciate it. Someone said, in his last day in office, Trump awarded Dr. Fauci, Birx, and Pence and the whole big pharma crew with the Presidential Medal, his last day of office. Yeah, absolutely. And it should not be forgotten, or I don't know if I'd say forgiven, but remember all those things and just make sure Trump supporters know this if he wins, and try to get them to get him to hire good people. And then if he doesn't hire good people, complain about it and try to push it in the right direction. I'm not trying to cover that up. Where's the super chat? I don't know. There's none. It's okay. I don't want to complain about it because then last time someone gave me one and I felt like a dick. I was like, oh, now I sound like a beggar. But someone said there are too many NPCs on YouTube with semi-documentaries. In what do you mean? In what category? Is Immortal Technique still rapping? I'm sure he is. But here's the interesting part. And I'm not trying to compare anything, but for me as a hip hop fan, right? I like Immortal Technique. I grew up liking his music. Nobody raps about what's going on now. You know what I'm saying? Like, we just got locked in our houses for 2 years and no rapper wants to put a verse about that. Like, they didn't notice that. Isn't that crazy? Like, think about that. That shows you what propaganda the mainstream industry is now. We got locked in our houses for 2 years. They printed a bunch of money. The only thing you'll ever hear from rappers is usually like them saying, I'm glad I got a stimulus check. Really. And I'm not like, I've heard that in 2 songs now. But nobody else, like, you don't want to weigh in on the fact that the government told us we couldn't criticize the pharmaceutical industry. You don't want to weigh in on the fact that they made multiple leagues of people get like pharmaceutical injections. Like, no, you don't want to put a verse about that. That's what made rap good, was people rapping about like real stuff. Now nobody raps about real stuff. Tom McDonald does, and no disrespect, because he's blew up, he's got hits, but like me personally as a consumer, and I don't want this to be disrespectful in any way, because he's done really great for himself and I think he's a great rapper. I'm just personally over it. Like, every song kind of sounds the same. I've heard the same kind of thing 1,000 times, and it's just like, I don't know. I feel like it's like that's like the, you know, I don't know. It's hard for me to like listen to anymore because I've heard it so many times. But, you know, that's a sign of success. When you get really successful and do well, that's what it's going to be. Like, you're always going to hit a moment. So you can't get there for me unless I've heard it so many times. But I don't know. I got other things, but someone said I'm 73, a rotting, decaying boomer, but I could still hold my own in the ring. Okay, well, maybe you should get in an elderly boxing match. I don't know about that though. Someone said, I think you're being censored on my screen where the video says, sorry, we're having trouble. I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to play some Mr. Bond tonight. You talking about the old one, or they got new ones? Who would you like to see pen a verse on the current state of culture events? Well, that's the thing. You can't force somebody to say something, but for me as a fan, like, I don't know. If at least if the music's really cool and good, then I'll listen to it. But like, where's the content? You know, that's what made hip hop great for me. And I know people can call me this or that or culture, like what you say, whatever you want. I don't really care. I just can't, like, no one wants to talk about what's going on in our country. No one. That's not making your verse. It's just boring to me. But I do what I want to see, you know, like, I don't just sit and complain and say, oh, he said, like, I make the verses that I want to hear. So you know, it doesn't really matter to me what other people do, because they're them. Like, you can't force Immortal Technique to say something he doesn't want to say. Like, he'll say what he wants to say and what he believes, and that there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, like, whatever I want someone to say, I just say it myself. Like my last song, I'm gonna just go through some of the lyrics. Like, nobody's rapping like this. I said, my name's Anam and I eat organic. Y'all fund the wars. You don't feed the planet. We seeing through all your evil magic. That food is fake. Do not eat the sandwich. Words of advice. Better start learning your rights. I'm going to turn up the lights. They passing laws in America, calling it hate if they talk of the murder of Christ. If you talk of the murder of Christ. No defamation. Get the chase and let's embrace it. Say his name like an exclamation. In the Lord's house, we don't need desecration. I'm the best. I don't even need an explanation. My Southside flow got Texas quaking. Everybody know the North is colder. Our fortress open. Did you know Bill Gates gave 100 racks to the red governor of North Dakota? And now you could look it up. Wait, did Bill Gates give $100,000 to the governor of North Dakota? Oh, he did. And then my next line, I don't want to get into it, but I said the uniparty is sort of broken. Part Puerto Rican, I'm sort of token. But I got that whole verse is fire, but it's like, I don't know. Nobody else is going to mention that. Who would rap about Bill Gates giving $100,000 to a Republican governor? It's not going to happen, so I got to do it, or else it's not going to get done. So I don't hold it against anyone else. I'm just like, snooze. You know, like, oh, this person dropped a lyrical track. About what though? He's not even talking about anything. Like, you know, they're throwing people in other countries in jail for like telling the truth about, we're having a racial conversation and everybody's just rapping about nothing. Like, it's just boring to me, you know? It's like, wow. It's like a podcast. Like, you know, like mainstream podcasts are like, huh, did you see that girl? I got drunk. And there was a girl. Bro, you know, men like women. I'm not opposed to it. It's just like, you know, it's not like there can't be a moment of that, but that's like mainstream podcasts. They're like, dude, I got like wasted with my bros and I like banged a chick without a condom. I hope she didn't get preg. And then it's like, you got some like call her daddy or something. She's like, oh my gosh, me and Chelsea Handler, we like totally like slutted out, but like there's nothing wrong with that, you know, like just be single and like just, you know, get drunk. And it's like, listen, I you know, I'm trying not to drink recently, but it's like I drink. I'm not like opposed to like partying or having fun or whatever, but it's like that's like what mainstream people are doing. It's getting like millions of views. You know what I'm saying? Millions of views, like some degenerate women just like, you know, it's like, and that's mainstream. And then you talk about something meaningful and like just like whatever. But you know, Candace Owens is popular. Tucker, politics are more popular than they've ever been, but it's because it's total rejection of mainstream culture. If you're a woman and you listen to these degens, you hit your 30s and 40s and you're like, that's not the way to live my life. And if you're a man and doing the same, you reach the same conclusion. That's why politics are getting more important and political rap has gotten important. Tom McDonald's done well. Bryson Gray's done well. It's because people are like tired of all that stuff. You know, it's like at a certain point, it only works so much. Like if you have that type of mindset, like it's not going anywhere. Like you're going to hit a wall and you either become super bitter or you fly the other way. Like one thing that I've noticed over the last couple of years is like women in their late 30s, early 40s, flying to Jesus Christ, flying to the Lord, flying to the Bible, because it's like they lived a certain way through their 20s and 30s, and then it just wasn't fulfilling. Like it's not long-term fulfillment. So then you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, being a conservative Christian is the answer. And then they fly to the Lord, you know? There's nothing wrong. I mean, it makes sense. I'm not knocking it. I'm just observing where similar to me in my 20s, I didn't think about politics, but I started getting more conservative because I was like, oh yeah, you know, I never even thought about that and that. But like when you're in your 20s, you don't have to think about shit. But once you hit your 30s, it's like, yeah, I want to start a family eventually. I want to do, but in my 20s, I didn't think about that at all. I didn't have parents that were telling me, you know, get a wife and do this and settle down. Like no one told me anything. You know, I mean, they said some things. It's not like they told me nothing, but in general, you know, like I didn't like, if you come from a Christian conservative family that's preaching all these things to you, you're like, yeah, I need to get married in my 20s and do this. Like, I didn't think about it until I was like, I just wanted to rap and, you know, go to a city. And then I turned like 31, 32. And I'm like, you know, yeah, I should probably start thinking about that stuff. So, but as a guy, you know, it's like there's always ways where like as a guy or girl, you could look at it and be like, I wish I did this then or whatever. But it all is what it is. And it's like, you know, you just got to make do with the choices you made. So it's not anything to complain about. And I think I'll be okay because also it's one of those things too. I think, you know, things I did put myself in a good position for the future. But yeah, it's like it's natural in your 30s to be like, you know what? That all is not the play. I have a theory about why country music's getting so popular, and nobody has really said it that I've heard, and I think I'm right, or else I wouldn't say it. I think country's getting more popular because people don't like crime, and there's a lot of crime in this country, and rap, not all, because there's a lot of great rap, a lot of great hip-hop, like I love Outkast, there's a lot of great hip-hop, but a lot of mainstream hip-hop is glorifying crime. And people don't like it. So they're like, where do I go to get away from that? Country. Oh, you know, there's hot chicks there and they're just singing about beer and women. And it's not all this degenerate stuff that doesn't make sense. It's other degenerate stuff. It's like country degenerate, like drink beer, get fat, ride a truck. But it's like more peaceful to people that traditionally liked hip hop music. And they're like, I'm tired of all this crime in the cities though. Like, why don't we move to the country? It's like, why do you want to move to the country now? I thought you liked the city. Well, the city's dirty. It's filled with crime. It's disgusting. And the country seems nice. And, you know, it's like the country boy that's going to drop me off at 9 o'clock. Like people like that idea. It's way more wholesome. I'm not saying it's perfect. There's a lot of degen vibes in country, but I do think people are like rejecting a lot of mainstream stuff for that reason. It's just a message that for so long, I feel like the street message, it related to certain people, whether they agreed with it or not. It's the lifestyle that they knew and came from. And for a lot, and I'm not trying to be rude here, I'm just trying to be honest. I think for a lot of like white people and suburban people, It was just edgy and cool. And it was something that white suburban people were like, that's just, it's like crazy to watch. You know, it's like watching like athletes or like say you watch Michael Phelps swim. You're just blown away by how good he is. And you're just like, this is so interesting. Like, you know, KatieLedecky's winning a bunch of medals, basketball teams like dunking, everybody like Tom Brady winning championships. You know, you just kind of sit and you're like, this is entertaining. I think people were entertained by hip hop because it was just so like different. And it's like, wow, that's really going on the street. That's messed up. The police are bad. And, you know, this is corrupt. And, you know, the drug trade was the CIA. Like that's rap I used to listen to. And I mean, you know, I'm not knocking it at all. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Like it's an amazing genre. But as it kind of progressed, like when it first started, it was b-boys and dancing. And then when people started getting lyrical, all the OG rappers were very wise. Like, you know, it's kind of like when they tell you like after the MLK thing, like everything got better, but then everybody's like, wait, it actually got crazy. Like what happened? Like there's a piece of the puzzle that you're missing. Hip hop was the same way. Like the early rappers were super smart, super wise, super on point, talking about stories, etc. But it wasn't super degenerate. And then it's like rap in the 90s. Like, I don't know if it was the labels forcing them to do it or whatever, or only hiring people. Like you listen to some of the OGs of hip hop, they say that the record labels, they only wanted to sign degen rappers who talked about crime. Like they didn't want all the cool guys who carried hip hop for the first 10 years. They only wanted crime rappers. And since then, it's like it's gotten, you know, there's good and bad of all genres, etc. But a lot of the people that like they're trying to push, like I listen to some rappers and it's like, it sounds evil. Like it's not even like, I used to like Lil Wayne. I like Big Timers. I still like the song Stay Fly. Like that song is hood, but it's like, you know, I'm still fly. I'm fly. I'm hood, but I'm fly. It is what it is. I'm cool. Look at me. I look fly. Like that's cool. He wasn't like, I'm gonna do this crazy evil thing to some of my neighbor. Like that's like demon music. Like a lot of the rap and a lot of like the white boy drug music now that they're pushing out is like demonic music. Like the lyrics are like, it's not even like I ride for my boys, I kill for my boys. It's literally like a demon like wrote the lyrics. They're like, I'm gonna kill you for no reason and steal your shoes and your mom. It's like, what the hell is wrong with these people? So you hear some of that sort of stuff, and it's like, you know, a lot of the people that traditionally like that, like if you live in a city and you get your car jacked 3 times, are you going to want to hear music about cars being stolen? Like that shit's only cool when you live in the suburbs, you know, and like your car's not getting stolen. Like that's when that music's cool. Once it starts happening to you, it's like following those lyrics. Same with like whether you're from the cities or the suburbs, like some of the things that they're talking about doing in the lyrics, if you do them, you're going to end up dead or in jail. And a lot of people are getting arrested. Like a Young Thug is getting arrested on RICO charges, and they're trying to charge him for all this stuff in his music. They're actually using the crimes in the music to charge him in real life. Like this shit's crazy. So I think a lot of that is just leading people to country music because it just seems a lot more innocent, a lot more wholesome, a lot more like, let's get out of these cities. Like LA used to be a dream destination. New York City, dream destination. Now you couldn't pay me to live there because it's not safe, it's not clean, it's disgusting, and everybody's getting robbed all the time. So who wants to hear robbery music when you're getting robbed all the time? No, they want to hear Morgan Wallen rap about drugs in the same way someone else used to rap about drugs. They want to hear, you know, Post Malone sing his little country song now. Like everybody won't say it, but I feel like the rejection of or the movement of rappers to to country is like the consumer wants to get away from all the degeneracy and the crime stuff that will lead you dead or in jail, and they don't like the cities that they live in. They want to go live in the country next to people that, you know, sing country songs. And then also for the artists, I think a lot of artists, they just see how big it's getting. Like Morgan Wallen is a superstar. Garth Brooks before Taylor Swift used to have the record for like the biggest, you know, grossing concert tours. Like it's always had money in it. It's just nobody really talked about it in the rap world. Once the rappers started realizing they're getting killed on the charts by Morgan Wallen, now they want to do a song with Morgan Wallen. You know, like there's different reasons for the consumer and the rapper. I think there's something cool about like that audience as well. It's like if you're doing your audience, but then if you make a country song and you get all the country chicks as a dude, you're like, yeah, that would be awesome. Like get all the country chicks to like me. So it's like the crossover. I feel like the consumer's crossing over and the artist is crossing over for 2 different reasons. But I find it interesting enough to talk about. Someone said country music's being marketed like crazy and they mark the shit out of it. Well, Bryson Gray has pointed this out too, because people will say like hip hop's super degenerate and country's not degenerate. Country's also kind of degenerate. Morgan Wallen raps about drugs and pills. A lot of rappers, I mean, a lot of country singers always rapped about beer. You know, it's a little more wholesome, but at the same time, it's a reflection of the American, I would say, rural areas, and that's what people are doing in the rural areas. Like, this is my beef with conservatives in rural areas. I like rural areas. I appreciate people, but let's be honest. Like, we could criticize the cities and be like, oh, look what's going on there. There's too much crime. It's this and that. But also the reality is, like, if you go to Miami, you have all that, but you also have not just good looking women and a lot of too much plastic surgery, but you have people working out. In California, you have fitness. Like, fitness is really popular in the big cities as well. You go to the rural areas, not all, but it's like people are fat and addicted to pills. Not all. I'm just saying, like, but you listen to country music, it's like drink a beer, and it's like, well, everybody's fat, like, you know, and they'll try to the same way they try to normalize all these messed up things to the Black community, and conservatives will point it out and be like, that's messed up. They're trying to trick you. They're also tricking conservatives. Like, if you go back 50 years, being obese wasn't part of being from the country. You were probably stronger than anyone because you had to be. So it's like, why is everybody so fat and addicted to pills in the country? Because they did the same thing to you that they did to the Black community decades before. They pumped the drugs into the Black community, and then they had a drug problem. And then they pumped pills, just different drugs, into the white rural community. And now the rural whites think that their culture is like fat and just, this is just how we are, drinking beer. And it's like, that was never rural white culture until 30, 40 years ago. And it's like, it's just hard for the Black community to admit that they're getting bamboozled because it's like a pride thing. And then same with white, they'll be like, well, country, it's like, not really. All of it's about drinking alcohol. And it's like the one thing that people probably could not do is drink less alcohol and get in shape. How come there's not a bunch of country songs about working out? Because it's just like, I drink my truck and my beer, and I drink a beer in my truck. And it's like, how come the country singers don't want to give a good message to the rural areas? Because they're just capitalizing on them. I'm not saying they're bad people, because I do like country music. I grew up on country music as well. I like Garth Brooks. I like Alan Jackson. I like OG stuff like that. I'm not really into new stuff that much, but it's like, you know, a message about a woman is beautiful. A message about trucks and fishing, like, that's relatable. But as far as like like, nobody wants to address that, where it's like, what's going on in rural America? Like, way too many people fat and way too many people addicted to pharmaceuticals. Like, you know, that's meth and all that stuff is a huge issue. And, you know, if people really wanted to like uplift their people, like, they got to point it out and be like, listen, we got to get in shape. We got to respect ourselves, and we got to not fall into this sort of lifestyle, because that's, you know, that's the deep state trap, or whatever it takes to convince people. But, you know, I'm not, in no way, shape, or form am I hating. I just feel like it's so sad what's happening to America. Like, when you hear these messages where it was like, you know, RFK, I loved what he said in his speech. He said, if someone was fat 50 years ago, they were like brought to the circus, you know, like, and it's not to be rude. It's like, that's lit. Like, you look at a fat person that was like, we consider fat now, they were in a circus. Like, look at me. And everyone's like, whoa, how did you get that fat? And he's like, I just keep eating. And they're like, isn't that unhealthy? And he's like, yeah, but someone's got to play it in the circuit. You know, like, now half the country is that fat. Everybody's addicted to pills. Like, the cities suck. The rural areas are getting unhealthy. Like, this country's wildly unhealthy. The food's unhealthy. The pills and the, you know, that type of stuff that they're pumping into the middle America is killing hundreds of thousands of kids. And nobody makes music about that. You listen to my music, say what you want. I'm talking about all of that stuff. It's like, how could I make a song not about it? You know, I'm going to make a happy song too, but it's like, you got like, it's like both genres of music are trying to cover up that that's even happening. And it's like, there's no message of inspiration. I mean, a little bit, but nobody wants to address it because you just sound like an asshole. Like, you don't, if you point out the crime in the cities, they'll call you racist, like, as if everybody wants to live around that shit. The truth is, like, nobody wants to live around that shit. It's just most people don't say anything because they don't want to be called racist. Like, who wants to live in a neighborhood where, you know, people's cars are getting jacked all the time? Like, people want to live in a high trust neighborhood, obviously. And then you go to like rural, it's like, why doesn't everyone move to the country like they say? Because farming is really hard. You know, like, I grew up on a farm. It's incredibly hard work, and it's crazy hard labor that most people don't want to do because it's like backbreaking labor. And then also, it's like seasons, and it's just all tough. And then also, like, why don't people like move to the country as much as they say? Things are cheap there. It's like, because moving to the country comes at a cost. You have to get a lot more self-sufficient. There's not as many stores around. Like, winters are hard. You really got to like know how to navigate that, or else you're going to hate it. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot more convenient in some ways to live in a city. So it's like, I see someone said, but you don't hear, I don't know what you're saying, but someone said US, yeah, I'm not surprised. And also, I mean, not to do more unnecessary ranting, but the pandemic too, like I didn't even think about that because I've been so busy, but it's like I was in better shape. I mean, I'm getting in better shape now, but the pandemic put everybody in worse shape, where I didn't feel like I was in bad shape because I'm never like that out of shape, and I always work out. But before that, it's like I was walking everywhere, doing everything. And like, you make me basically not be able to do that much for like a year, or even like 4 or 5 months, whatever it was. Like that has an impact as well. Like not being able to move the way you do, even if it's like walk to work and do all these things, being confined to little spaces, like that wasn't healthy for anybody. And that's all I'm saying is like nobody's making music about that. I know, you'll find it in rap because hip hop is like a creative, I'm not knocking country because I like country too, but I think hip hop's a little bit more creative than country. Country's a little less creative. So you'll hear more rappers talk about that, but they're fringe rappers. You don't like, when's the last country song where they like mention the fact that the government locked us down too? You don't really hear much about, like they all say like freedom and liberty, but it's like that we just lost it for 2 years. Like you don't want to mention it in one line of a song. It's like I don't know. It always just like weirds me out that the gaslighting like that never happened, and like basically like the rewriting of history where it's just like let's just pigeonhole that. Someone said we can make clouds and make it rain. Why aren't they putting it all back together? Questions you got to wonder. They can make it rain, but I don't know what they are making it rain in different parts of the country now. I don't know what other effect it has. It probably has a side effect, but they are doing that in some cases. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up because I feel like out of context that rant could have been messed up, but I wish the best for the country. And I don't point out these things to like, make people feel bad or anything, because that would be messed up. It's just like, it's just sad. Like if you love your nation and you want to love the cities and you want to love, the rural areas. It's not like I don't like this country's awesome, but that's why the RFK speech was so powerful to me. And that's why so many people like RFK. If you haven't watched it, go to my Twitter and go watch it. He spent 18 minutes systemically breaking down how we're being poisoned through food and drugs. And that affects everybody of every race, of every location. Like people want to hear that. And the thing with Trump, as great as he is at some things, he never talks about that. So a lot of people feel stuck in this false paradigm where it's like you got these two parties fighting, but nobody's talking about this stuff. And it's so like you could be like, oh, that's not important. Why is half the country obese? You can't tell me it's not important. Why is 50% of why are like RFK so eloquently has told tens of millions of people, why do so many people have all these chronic diseases that didn't exist? It's a combination of a lot of things, but it's like, let's just start with one, the diet. And it's not like, oh, you're bad, you're eating too much. What are we eating? What are they feeding us? Like we're like cattle fodder. It's like we get worse food than them and nobody seems to notice, and that's why everybody's so out of whack. So, that speech was awesome, but that's kind of how I look at the country, where it's like, there's got to be like a 10-year period where we look back to where we were, in 10 years. This is the optimist in me. We look back where we were now and we were like, holy crap, we were getting bamboozled. I can't believe that was happening. And to be fair, if you really look to be optimistic as well, healthy food was not that, but like the 80s and 90s, like they made everything microwavable and everything was like Fruity Pebbles and everybody bought into it. But like since then, healthier food, organic food, they're popping up all over the place. People are seeking better stuff. Like it's getting more popular. So like the trend is we got to like push that trend home. And that's all I'm saying with the Trump and RFK thing too. Trump has a better chance than Kamala of doing something about this. He didn't last time. There's no reason to trust him, but he owes RFK a favor for dropping out and endorsing him. We need to get RFK as the FDA director. That would be one of the biggest game changers in recent government history. Even if RFK failed, you can't be much worse than Scott Gottlieb or these other guys. So it's like, what's the point of being so angry about it? To me, it's just like, I'm optimistic, but that for me, I'm not going to cry if Kamala wins, but Trump is like a dice roll. Kamala, Tim Walz, the things they want to do, it's not good. They want us to be like France. They want to, like, they're openly, not them specifically, but their ilk, they're openly being like, Elon Musk better be careful. Like, all these things about communism, blah, blah, blah. Call it what you want. I don't care what you call it. The Democrats are trying to do, they're not even trying to pretend like they give a crap about this stuff. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Help Trump win, and then, focus on him, and do not allow him to be a sleazeball or a sneak again. But like, to me, like Kamala winning, like them being able to just like take over and have no competition, you think they're bad now, just wait until they feel like they'll never lose an election again. That's how I feel. I've criticized Trump a lot, the Republicans. I'm never going to stop like calling out their BS, but to me, it makes sense to vote for them. And, I think there's more, anything that you care about, any criticism that you have of me not feeling a certain way, the Republicans are more likely to do that, and they're more likely at least to take their foot off the pedal that's driving in your direction that you don't want. Like, it doesn't mean that they're going to save you on everything, but to me, there's so much among all the annoying things that they've done. There's so much energy going in the right direction. Like, I want them to win, and I want people to pay attention. I don't want the other side to lose. As much as I complain about both parties, I don't want Democrats to win. There's 10 things that they do that are way more dangerous, and there's no resistance. Like, if Trump does something stupid, there's going to be resistance. If you look for name one left-wing person that is critical of Big Pharma. Say you're mad at Trump for all the stuff he did, which you have every right to be. I'm never going to forget what he did. With that being said, where are all those people? They're all on the right. Every critic of Big Pharma and skeptic of like what they're doing is conservative. So it's like, which parties, if there's going to be a change, which parties are going to come through? It's going to come through the right. If they're going to get rid of taxes and you're a libertarian, which party is it going to be? It's not going to be the Democratic Party. It's going to be the Republican Party. Like, Republicans, for almost everything that we want done, they're the ones that maybe will do it. The Democrats will not. There's a 0% chance. In fact, they're going to put the foot in another direction. Here's another thing. I'm going to stick with it while I'm on it. You look at certain countries, and the tax that they do on capital gains is astronomical. And the Democrats are floating ideas to say that they want to tax uncapitalized gain, or I don't know the exact name for it, but it's basically like, it's not even profits. Like, capital gains is when you make money in a stock or an investment. I think it's over a year, perhaps. I don't know the exact timing of it, but it's like unrealized gains, I think they called it. It's like, what does that mean? They already steal way too much money all the time. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, this is the type of shit they'll want to do. Like, you're a libertarian and you don't like taxes. Democrats are openly trying to tax money that you didn't even make yet. Like, unrealized gains, it's like, oh, you might make. It's like, they already tax way too much. They're definitely the greater of two evils. If you have a huge inkling on a topic that says, I don't want to vote, I respect it. I'm not going to sit and complain or call you names or cry. But to me, it's like, I'm voting Republican, and I'm planning on making a full video explanation for why I got to, like, it makes sense for the election, and I want to articulate it instead of being like, this is the way I feel. Because as bad as Trump can be and as sold out as he could be, et cetera, like the things that the Democrats are openly plotting, it's like, for everything Trump does, there's going to be resistance, and there's going to be, a separation somewhat, not on every topic, but on most. The Democrats, they could just put the pedal down. I mean, of course, then people will get annoyed. Obviously, it's not like nobody would care, but yeah, they have some pretty bad plans, in my view. Let me know what you guys think. Appreciate you. God bless you. God bless your family. God bless America. God bless the world. Thank you for watching today. And yeah, check out my shop, dreamrare.com. These hats are sold out. The white hats are all sold out now. So you'll see they say sold out. But we have cream colored hats, and any hat like this, they're all almost sold out. If you want one of these, I might make them again. I might never make them again. I don't know. I don't have any plans for production right now. So these hats are awesome. Every time I wear it, people love them. The sweatshirts are awesome. Like, the whole shop's almost sold out. But especially if you want one of these hats, I'm not just saying this. Yeah, there's probably under 20 total of like all colors. I'm talking like cream color under 10. Pink hat, there might be 0, there might be under 10. So if you want some, get them now. And that's what it is. Appreciate you guys. Dreamrare.com is the shop. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, stay blessed long sleeve, God is great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support. Everything's made in the United States. Handpicked by me. Patreon.com/raretalk for $5 a month. You can help support me, support the show. If you haven't noticed, unlike other channels, I don't work with very many sponsors, sometimes none at all. And part of the way I'm able to do that is with the dreamrare.com shop and patreon.com/raretalk. So thank you